Hello, and thank you for joining the Champion Within podcast, your premier go-to spot for unlocking your winning mindset. Whether you're an athlete looking to elevate your game to the next level, a coach leading the charge, an enthusiastic parent cheering from the sidelines, or an educator molding young minds, the Champion Within podcast episodes are packed with value, sharing the tools and strategies to unlock your potential and rise to new heights. Hosted by mentor, coach, and mindset leader Kate McCauley. Let's sit back and enjoy today's episode while discovering your champion within. And now, here's Kate.
Hey champions, thank you for joining us on the Champion Within podcast. I am bringing back a guest today that was on as a panel chat with her athletes because I just wanted to talk to her more. I'm going to be totally honest with you. Today we're talking with Bobbi Caprice, who's the Director of Athletics at Penn State Brandywine. We are going to dive into what it's like to be a student athlete. She has some advice to share with my athletes, my parents, my coaches. I'm sure all of you are going to be leaning in to steal what she has to offer. Bobbi, how are you today?
Hi, Kate. Thanks so much for having me back.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. I'm excited to talk with you again. Last time when we had all of the athletes, it was such a great episode. It was one of my highest listened episodes, actually. But I wanted to talk to each of you individually, and I already got the athletes, and I was like, I need to get Bobbi back on here. So awesome. I'm glad we finally connected. You're super busy, so thank you for sparing some time. Let's jump right into it. If I'm a parent of an athlete, we're going to all the schools, looking at the different facilities and what people have to offer. What would you tell me to be whispering into my athlete's ear to look for when he or she is deciding, where should I go to college if I want to play athletically the next level?
Yeah, that's such a great question. Really, my biggest piece of advice to the parents specifically is always making sure that it's a great educational fit. I think the student athletes, and I get it, I was a student athlete, being recruited and had that same mindset that they do at that time, but they're thinking about their sport specifically. And that's great. And you definitely want to make sure it's a great athletic fit, but it also needs to be paired with that education, right? majority of these student athletes are not going pro in their sport. Yes, they're going to have a great experience in their college career. They need to make sure that they're at a school that is going to get them to the finish line and get them beyond, into the real world and in a career that they're passionate about and prepared for. And I think that that's really where the parents' role can kind of come in. We always say the students kind of make their decision with their heart, and the parents really are helping guide the decision with their brains, and they need to meet in the middle and find the best choice for that specific student athlete. So that would be my, biggest recommendation to the parents through the whole process, which is so overwhelming.
It is.
I feel for all the families, but like I said, keeping education first and foremost is most important.
Well, I love that answer. I never want to say what my thoughts are before I ask a question like that, but it's student athlete for a reason. I was raised by an educator, as a teacher for 20 years in the classroom, still teaching, just in a different capacity. Student comes first. And myself as a mom of students who are in college, one who's about to jump in next year, I really think that is important because, like you said, not everybody's going to the next level after college. And even if you are, you want to have a degree, you want to like what you're doing every single day. You have to go to school in order to still be that athlete. It's not like you're just there to play. Of course, a lot of athletes are looking at all of, the facilities and things like that, but the classroom piece is a large piece of it and a very important piece. So I'm glad that that's what first popped into your brain there.
Certainly. I just will add that a lot of our recruited student athletes come in and they're making their decision based off of their coach. And although I love all of my coaches and they're really excellent individuals, I'm always reminding our recruited athletes that come through, like our prospective students when they're here on visits, don't be picking a school based off of a coach. At the end of the day, it's their career as well. And it's not a guarantee that they're going to be there the next year.
Very good
or
point.
During your 4 years. And so often we're hearing students, pick their college decision off of their love of a coach. And then the unfortunate happens and the coach is no longer there. And now that student athlete is looking to jump ship. And, you want to pick a school that you're going to be there for 4 years, right? We're seeing so much going on with the transfer portal and seeing people, jump ships. But That then puts people back educationally, and they might need to do an extra year because of transferring. So, you really want to pick a school based off of the school and the educational component.
What a good piece to include there. I know that when you're a junior or senior in high school and you're starting to look at those things, you have a coach or maybe a couple coaches if you're playing club in school, but those coaches are such an important piece of your everyday life. When you go to visit, like you said earlier, their heart is like, oh, I love this person. But it's so important that that brain and heart meet in the middle, with the parent maybe whispering in their ear using the brain side, because you don't know what the coach is going to do. And the coach is not going to say to a prospective athlete, oh, by the way, I'm not going to be here in 2 years. I just probably want to let you know that, because then they lose some people that are coming for next year. So it is very important for athletes and parents to consider that, because that can be crushing. I've had athletes on the podcast who have said, oh, I went to school for track thinking that this is my coach. And then freshman year, end of the year, he tells me he's retiring, and it was heartbreaking. Yeah. And part of me is like, yeah, I mean, that is always a possibility, but the kid just doesn't think of that when they're 17, even 18 years old. That's not something that is popping into their mind. So That's a good piece to bring up. You brought up the portal when people are jumping ship and those types of thing, and how those types of situations. What advice would you give there? I know you just mentioned it can push you back academically. Have you had to help people as the director of athletics navigate through that? And do you have any advice for maybe the athlete and parent there?
Certainly. My biggest piece of advice in this area is, truthfully, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. I can't tell you how many student athletes I've had reach out to me after they left and regret their decision. They might leave, after freshman year, maybe emotional. They didn't get the playing time they wanted, right? Well, maybe, there was a strong senior class and we just needed them to graduate, and your time to shine was next year. Or, in our case, we see it a lot with Penn State Brandywine being a part of the Penn State system. A lot of our students utilize the 2+2 program. So they might go up to University Park to finish out their degree. And typically when they're here, it's a tough battle. Like, should I go up to University Park? Should I not? Now, in cases where their major requires them to go up to University Park, of course, always we're going to support them through that. But occasionally we might have, let's say, like a business major who says, I just want that, larger experience. So I'm going to play for 2 years and then I'm going to go up there, right? They're thinking about like a student, or like a, I don't want to say like a kid, but, they're thinking about the larger campus. Like they just want to, they want to socialize. And that is what they want to get out of their college experience. They get up there and then they quickly realize, wow, this is not for me. Yes, it was fun the first weekend, but that's not what I want out of my college career. And then they're, quickly thinking about coming back. So I always tell our student athletes who are looking to transfer, I just have a conversation with them. Of course, we're going to support them in whatever the decision it is that they want to make. But I always just remind them that the grass isn't greener on the other side. And just because you think you'll get more playing time or you think a situation might be different, doesn't necessarily mean that will always be the case.
Yeah, it's a good thing to remind everyone of. I mean, this is a life lesson too. Sometimes you have to decide, is this a year where I'm not the starter and then next year I can earn my spot in life? As we talked about a couple minutes ago, you're not necessarily going on to maybe play professional. Some people are, of course, those elite athletes, but most athletes at the college level are not going to professional levels. And when you get out into the world, no matter what you're going to do, you are going to have to earn it. Nobody is going to hand things to you. So there's going to be things in life, in your career and just life in general, where it's not always going to feel good and you're not going to be the number one. So there's lessons to be learned there too. It's a tough decision, because everybody's waving that jump in the portal. It's a hard thing for athletes now to figure out what's the best thing for me to do. So I think having a conversation is important to weigh the pros and cons of what's best for me. And to be honest, the grass isn't always greener. I think that's
exactly.
I
do think some kids just want to see what their options are. They might ask for us to put them in the portal. They don't end up ever leaving, but they just want to know, will I get some phone calls from college coaches? Okay. Will I not? I think they're kind of just like testing I guess
How would this go?
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah. I
exactly.
regret,
So
like, if I didn't do it kind of thing.
yeah, I guess so. So yeah, so like I said, we'll always support them, with their decision, but I always like to have a conversation with them first.
Right. Now, you were a student athlete. We talked about you were 4 years basketball. You played a little volleyball too, from what I
A little bit of
remember.
volleyball. Yeah, I say I was a member of the volleyball team, not necessarily a player,
Okay.
but I was on the roster, had a great
Gotcha.
time. But yeah, but I played basketball during my 4 years here.
Gotcha. So, how have things changed for student athletes? I mean, obviously, the portal, we just talked about with transfers, but how have things changed from when you were an athlete to what you help athletes do now?
Yeah, there's so much. I mean, yes, in the landscape of college athletics, there's been so many changes. Specifically here at Penn State Brandywine, we've had so many institutional changes in
Hmm.
terms of our transition into the NCAA. So right now we're in our third year of a 4-year process to become an NCAA institution. So there's just been so much changes here on campus regarding athletics in general, but all positive changes that when I was a student athlete was, something that we were talking about as a campus. And it's been so great to, now be in this role and being able
Right.
to lead the department through it. It's been really, really special. But yeah, as far as just, college athletics in general, I'd say maybe this comes with our NCAA transition because we are getting a higher caliber of a student athlete than maybe we did, 10, 15 years ago when I was a student athlete. I just say our student athletes put a lot of pressure on themselves, some pressure to be, successful in all realms, whether that's athletics, academics. There's definitely a mental side of the game that I feel like has really increased, over the years. So just keeping up with those, national trends and making sure that we're giving all of our student athletes all the resources they need to be successful, both in sport and in academics and beyond.
Yeah, so true. Obviously, the work I do with the mental side of the game. It is new, although it's been around for
Mm-hmm.
all these years. And when we played, I'm even older than you, it just wasn't something that people discussed. I feel like it was out there, but nobody really talked about doing it. But now it's more, this is a part of what we do. We talk about mental toughness, not just as, motivational poster, but we actually put the tools into place. Would you say that your athletes ask those types of questions? I'm curious, just for my own knowledge, when they're coming in, are they asking about things like that? What do you do with the mental side of the game? Is that something they're looking at when they come to check out Penn State Brandywine?
Definitely. I would say a larger percentage than years past. Not everyone's focused on it, but certainly a large group is. So making sure that all of our student athletes have all the resources that they need to be successful, making sure that we're providing those resources in the beginning of the year is important. So something we incorporated this year was our second year is a mental health survey for all student athletes are required to do it. It's in conjunction with our campus's counseling office. They review all of the survey results and then follow up with student athletes that, need any support, but then also just providing student athletes, tools for maybe not necessarily mental health, but just, the mental side of their sport, right?
Right.
So, making sure that we have clear minds and going into every game, like I said, with the tools needed to be successful.
I love that. Thank you for doing that, or whoever started that survey and checked on everyone, because checking on your teammates and things like that is something that, people are talking about, but you actually have to do it. A lot of times people are like, oh yeah, we say that all the time. I'm like, okay, that's great, but what are you actually doing? So as a Penn Stater, I love to hear that survey went out and actually the follow-up is happening with the student athletes. So thank you to you and everybody else who's in charge of getting all of that done. I know that's a big job to get done. I appreciate you more than you know as an athlete and just a mom in general and, all the things.
Hey coach, does any of this sound familiar? Your athletes are talented, but they lose focus when the pressure's on. Confidence swings up and down from game to game. Some play tight and second guess themselves. They struggle to reset after mistakes. Think about it. How many games or competitions have you lost, not because the other team was better, but because your athletes got in their own heads? Every coach has seen it. The missed free throw, the strikeout, the dropped pass, not from lack of skill, but from lack of mindset. That's why I created the Champion Within programs, to bring tools that will help unlock peak performance for your athletes. It's also why I lead team workshops on visualization, breath work, and mental skills training to take these conversations off the podcast and bring it to your team. I do this in person and virtually. Imagine your athletes learning how to bounce back faster, handle pressure with confidence, and step into the game mentally sharp and ready. That's the difference mindset training makes. If you're ready to give your team that edge, let's talk. Go down to the show notes after the show and set up a call to see how I can help your athletes win from the inside out.
I'm curious, when you're in this role now, what's the best part of getting into the new NCAA division and just seeing all of that happen? It's a lot of work, I know. What is the best part for you?
Yeah, it's been a lot. I definitely didn't realize what was entailed, as detailed as the whole process is prior to us starting. But our feet are knee deep. And it's been quite the process, and I'm blessed to be able to lead the way. So there's been a lot of great parts, just being a part of every step of the way with the NCAA, going to the NCAA conventions. Last year, my associate AD and I went to the NCAA Regional Rules Seminar. There's just so many resources that the NCAA provides, and we are soaking it all in. I've been telling our staff we've been taking advantage of everything the NCAA has to offer. And it's really been great for us professionally, also for, just Penn State Brandywine athletics as a whole. So, but really, what's the best part? I mean, to me, athletics, right? So it comes down to the competition, like seeing our student athletes compete against some, really high caliber, respected Division III programs. Not that we weren't competing against these schools in the past, we were, but now, like, the sense of like, we're on the same page as you, right? It's really been special. Our whole department, from our coaches to our student athletes, have really been embracing, the Division III, mindset, and it's been great.
Yeah, that's exciting. I'm excited for you. I know it's a lot of work. It is cool to get that professional development, I guess we'll call it, when you're going to all these different conferences, learning the different things and soaking it all in. When you're new, it's overwhelming because you have to, check all the boxes, make sure everything's done correctly. But it is cool to learn all of those things and then implement it, see it in action, and have your athletes actually compete at that level. They might not realize it, but when you're seeing it in action, that's got to be pretty amazing and rewarding. So thank you for doing that work. When you're looking for coaches, and not just now, but in general, are you the person that is interviewing them? What do you look for in a coach? Because I know I have some coaches at all different levels that are looking at different options in their world. What do you look for a coach when you want to bring someone in?
Yeah, great question. So when I do coaches searches, first I scan everyone with phone calls first. Like, I do that myself. And then I'll decide, depending on the sport and the interest level that we have, I'll typically bring, 3 to 5 candidates to campus. When they get to campus, they'll meet with me first individually. Then we'll sit down with my full team, my full-time staff, our athletic trainer, and then we'll do, kind of like a group interview. And then I always end the interview with them getting the opportunity to meet with a few student athletes on the team. I love our student athletes' feedback in the process. And that's important to me, and kind of seeing how the coach, gels with the students as well. Really important. So anyway, that's kind of how the interview structure goes. As far as what I'm looking for in a coach, honestly, every program's a little bit different. What I might need for one program might be very different for what I need for someone else. We also have the uniqueness that all of our head coaches are part-time employees. So they have full-time roles outside of this. So I feel like I'm kind of always looking for like a unicorn, right? To fit exactly what we need. But the best, let's say I'm hiring a basketball coach, right? The best X's and O's basketball coach might not be the best candidate for Penn State Brandywine athletics. Right. So there's a lot that goes into it in terms of obviously the X's and O's of their sport, But then, personally in their life, does a part-time role fit for them? Do they live close to campus and can
Right.
conveniently get here, right? Sometimes I've had really great candidates who live like an hour and a half away, and they tell me they're very serious and don't mind the commute. And I've been burned in the past, that's not
Yeah.
necessarily the case when it works out, right? So, like I said, these are just some little examples that I kind of have now over the years kind of really found I'd say the sweet spot in terms
Mhm.
of, just kind of knowing the width people will go to, to take a part-time job. But
Right. How
anyway,
many
so
years have you been there?
I've been in this role for 7,
Okay.
and I spent about 5 years prior to that as our assistant AD.
Gotcha. So you sort of know. I mean, someone coming in, they may think, oh, an hour and a half, that's not that bad. I would drive here to be that part-time coach. But when you have another job and they maybe don't realize what they're actually saying yes to, and you
Yep.
start, like you said, and maybe they do, but in some cases, if you've been there long enough where you start to see, yeah, that's probably not the case. I don't know.
For looking for like top characteristic of what I
Mhm.
would look for in a coach, I'm like really into just like passion and enthusiasm. I feel like that's how I lead my life. I have so much passion for Brandywine athletics specifically, and that's what allows me to go the extra mile for the department. So I just feel so strongly that if I can really understand your passion, your enthusiastic, ability towards this role, that attracts me more to you, right? So
Right.
I might be more willing to take a chance on a coach who has less, maybe that X's and O's experience because I know how dedicated and passionate they are to be successful in that role. So, yeah, so that I'd say that's kind of my number one look for sure.
Yeah. I love that. I'm thinking when you said the student athlete piece, what a great part to bring in. I don't know if that's commonplace for athletic directors to do that. I'm not sure if you're familiar. Do you think other schools do that? Bring the athletes in?
Honestly, I would probably
Okay.
say most do, especially smaller departments like ourselves, maybe a
Gotcha.
large department where they have, 20 full-time employees and they have, a bunch of people meeting with the candidates. But I'd say in smaller departments, it's probably more common.
Yeah. I know it's maybe not as doable, but I would actually love to see high school athletic directors do something like that.
Yeah.
Even if it's just the seniors who are the captains, they're not even going to be there next year necessarily, but you have a new coach coming in, that you're interviewing them, or maybe it is the incoming seniors, juniors. I don't know how you decide it, but I would love to see that just to get the feedback from a student athlete. It's just something that I think would be an interesting piece to bring in because I don't think that that's something I've ever heard of high school. I've heard college, smaller colleges definitely, but I'm not sure about the bigger ones. I don't think I've ever asked. But I would love to see that. So I'm just throwing that out there right now on the podcast. Not that you have to take my advice, but if any high school athletic directors, if you're not doing that already, why not? Bring them in, see what happens.
Yeah, I love it. And I tell all of our students, like, I warn them beforehand, I love your feedback. It
You're
doesn't
not the
mean
final
that
say.
who you tell me
Right.
is who I will pick. But I will seriously take your comments into consideration.
Right.
And I do, and I've had it, go both ways a million times where I went with their pick or I went without them. And
Mhm.
it always, like I said, it always works out in the end.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an important piece to mention. It's not like the kid's the deciding factor, especially at that high school level. But I do think sometimes they see something that we as the adults might not
Yep,
as the
exactly.
athletes. So it's an interesting take to bring that in. I know
Yeah.
here locally in different areas, they like to bring students in with the school board and different things. They want student representatives and different things in a lot of areas in education. And I don't see it as much in the sport area. Again, not that they're the end all in the decision, but it would be cool to have them in. And it's a good thing for them to do too. Just
Yeah.
a little, almost like a learning experience in many ways for them.
Exactly.
The interview.
The other piece I think that's really helpful for me is
Mhm.
that by no means am I an expert, X's and O's in every sport.
Sure.
So my kids can really tell me, okay, we talked about these specific drills that they would run at practice, right? And I'll really use my student athletes to be the kind of like the expert in their sport,
Makes sense.
because it's hard for me as an athletic director to ask, and I do, like, we'll always ask, one or two X's and O's questions. Basketball, I might ask them to, you got 10 seconds left, you got the ball under the
Right.
basket, run me the play, draw it up for me. But not every sport you could do that. I'm
Sure.
thinking more so a sport like tennis or a sport like golf. I'll really rely on my student athletes to ask the questions about, like, the practice dynamic and what type of specific drills will you run, and the players will always give me that feedback and give it to me with, hey, this coach just told me that we just go out there and hit the ball, no strategy at all.
Right.
So anyway, I take all of that feedback, well through the process.
Yeah, makes sense. It's making me think of something. I just talked about this the other day with my own children. When I was student teaching, my middle school co-op teacher, her husband was an athletic director at a local middle school. They did
Okay.
not have a tennis coach at the time. And because I was a student teacher and could be talked into anything as
Yep.
a health and phys ed teacher, and I really did love sports in general, I was talked into being the tennis coach over at this middle school, which was like 20 minutes, wasn't hard. I had no kids, nothing going on. I could do this in my life. But I had never played tennis. I took tennis as, the phys ed student. I've played for fun. But I was honest with them. I said, I've never played tennis. They're like, if we don't have a coach, we do not have a season. And they're like, we just think you're passionate. You're like hyping these kids up. I literally read Tennis for Dummies, when those books were popular.
Yep.
And I told the parents and the kids right from the beginning, I am not a tennis expert. And ironically enough, the next season, a couple of the parents messaged me saying, we have a real tennis coach now. I'm like, oh, great. They're like, we don't actually love them as much. I was like,
Oh my
okay,
gosh,
give
I
it
love
time.
it.
But it is funny you said that, because if they, if somebody was coming in, I guess you could fake it, but an
Yep.
athlete coming in would be able to probably know, because, you're not going to be an expert in every sport. If you are the athletic director, you couldn't have possibly played every single sport at the highest level. So it
Too
just made me
funny.
think
I
of
love
that.
it.
Yeah. And I was like,
That's
I was
great.
very honest. I was like, I'll do this. And I felt very guilty. The end of the season, they brought me like gift cards, like
Oh, I
Dunkin'
love
Donuts,
it.
like little stuff, and like flowers. I'm like, this was not necessary. I was like, felt like I was yelling random sport words a lot, like
So
great
good.
hustle.
Yeah. Go get them.
Yeah,
That's good.
but
I love it.
it's funny how those things happen. But anyway, the kids' feedback would have been valuable if someone was lying in that situation.
Exactly.
So, well, I love all of those tips there. I think there's a lot to learn for coaches, athletes, and parents. Thank you for sharing all of that. We're going to go to our last question. And then before my listeners leave, I do want you to drop information about the campus so people can connect, whether it's
Great.
an athlete, a parent, a coach. So don't leave us if you're here listening with us. Our signature question: if you were the main character and we're in the movie called The Champion Within, screen goes to black at a cliffhanger moment, they're wondering what's going to happen next in this movie for you. What do you think will be happening?
First comes to mind is our NCAA journey, right? So,
Mhm.
In the sequel, I hope we're winning a national championship, Penn State Brandywine's first NCAA national championship. That would definitely be a dream come true. And just seeing our campus and our department having success in the NCAA is really, definitely would be the next part in the movie for sure.
I love it. That would be a great part that they'd all be, I'm sure, cheering for. That'd be cool. And I'm here for it. I hope that actually does happen in real life. Well, tell my listeners, how can they connect either with you, the campus in general, if they're interested in maybe checking the campus out for athletics, or maybe connecting with you?
Awesome. Well, I hope that everyone will consider Penn State Brandywine, located in Media, right? So I grew up down the street from the campus. I knew you grew up not too far away. And sometimes the name kind of slips away from people. People are like, where's Penn State Brandywine?
Right.
Right down 352. So come visit. It's a beautiful campus. Athletically, if you are interested in Brandywine athletics, you can fill out our prospective student form on our website, psubrandywine.athletics.com. When you do that, our coaches will get your contact information and then follow up to talk about if it makes sense, to continue the recruitment process. But all of our games are free. Welcome everyone to come out and watch our games, cheer on our teams. Support your local Penn State campus. Nothing better than that. And would love to have everyone join the Brandywine family one day.
I love it. And for my listeners, I will drop all of those links right in the show notes so you can just click on them down below and make it really simple for you to connect with everybody and follow the teams, go check them out, fill out those applications, or, if you're a prospective athlete, just follow the links so you know exactly what to do and connect with Bobbi. All right, Bobbi, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. Anything else that you think, I really want athletes to know this before we end our conversation today?
Like I said, keep the educational component at the forefront. And if you do that, I think everything will follow suit. I wish everyone the best of luck. Like I said, Penn State Brandywine is a great spot to be. So I hope I see you all on campus.
I love it. I agree with that since I was there on campus. So thank you very much again for hanging out with us. And everybody who's here listening, we appreciate you. Make sure you come back and listen to our Sunday episode. All right.
Thank you for hanging out with Kate today. And whether you're going to coach, teach, cheer from the sidelines, or hitting the field yourself, remember, mindset is everything. Don't forget to follow the show for the latest episodes, as we all need a little extra motivation, humor, and sanity in our busy lives. Now, go and unleash your champion within you, one step at a time. We're always rooting for you.